Goodness sake, 30 seconds. All right, guys, here we go. And yeah, here we go. It's Saturday, and this is going to be History Reset. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. And I'm going to talk about what I'm going to talk about. Hey, everybody, this is Emily, and it's Saturday, and it's time for History Reset. Yay! No, I don't have any music to add. I really ought to have some music. Maybe somebody will lead me to some music that I can use. Well, that's right. Steve has music at People's Internet Radio, and People's Internet Radio is where this is being broadcast right now. And what I did last week was go through the sacred literature, and I located 3 puzzling places in Genesis that really hadn't been explained very well. Genesis 1:1, what we're reading is that there's this mess of an ecosystem that is getting sorted out. This is not about the creation of a spinning ball planet. No. Okay. There was something else going on here. The one that was making things happen looks as if he's making repairs. And that is the story in the Voyagers II book when Earth, Tiamat, and Nibiru collided, and Earth being a crystal shattered, and we're sitting on the remnants of particularly the northern hemisphere of Tiamat. This is the planet we're on, is Tiamat. So that was the first thing. The second thing in Genesis 3:15, where Yahweh, the planetary sovereign, says to Adam and Eve, okay, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between his seed and your seed, and you will bruise him in the heel, and he will bruise you in the head. Okay, and that's about the competition between the laws, the natural laws of creation versus the commercial laws of the serpent. The serpent is all about commerce. That's what we find out. It's all just business in terms of commerce. You'll see that later. All right. And then we looked at the 6th chapter of Genesis and the problem of the Nephilim, the giants. And I showed you from, okay, it's the giants are in here. Okay, come let us make man in our image. And giants have been dug up and are being dug up and are showing up and showing up and showing up even yet. Okay, so the giants have not gone away, and they're not going to go away because they're endemic to the interstellar creation that different environments and different planetary systems scale their life forms differently. You can have a human is a foot tall or 6 feet tall or 60 feet tall. Okay, all of these are perfectly viable in the creator universe. Okay, so one of the things that I've discovered, and my process is this: I've given you my list of books, and I've read all these books. And now what I have to do is connect the dots and resolve the discrepancies. Now, I know there are other researchers who do it differently, all right? They pick one book and they swear by whatever, heaven and earth, that book is the only book that has the true story in it. Well, you and I know that different witnesses see events slightly differently. So I have 7 books, and my task is to resolve the discrepancies. All right. So when In the Bible, it says, let us make, let us do this and that. Us is plural. Okay. Yahweh, the planetary sovereign, was not plural. And let me explain why. Okay. In his original story, given in The Right Use of Will by Cian de Loran, okay, the story of Yahweh, he and Shekinah split up very, very early in the creation. So solid Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton, who is mentioned in this list, in every one of these books in this list, did not have a consort during the period of time that we're talking about in history. He was alone. And Shekinah only appeared as a light in the most holy of holies in the Jewish temple, okay, but not as an individual spirit that Yahweh was negotiating and dealing with. All right, so when it says let us in Genesis, it's not Yahweh. Remember, Yahweh came here when the planet had been destroyed in a collision, and he came here to fix it. The earth already had 5 root races when he got here. He had no need, personally, to create a slave race in order to mine gold, in order to repair the atmosphere on Nibiru. So he's not the one who genetically altered humanity from whatever it was to Adam, which we hear all about in the Sumerian cuneiform tablets and Enki Speaks and the book of Enoch, okay? Yahweh's not the one who genetically altered the Neanderthal man to make him smarter. That was not Yahweh's work. And the second thing that wasn't Yahweh's work was confusing the languages at the Tower of Babel. Confusing languages is the last thing that the planetary sovereign would want to do. How in the world is he going to create a planetary unity with 5 root races if everybody speaks a different language? Let us do it again was somebody with authority. Now, I've already showed you in the Urantia book, which is 2,069 pages of hierarchy, all right? And it was inspired by the hierarchy itself, okay? The galactic hierarchy at Orion Nebula, okay, has authority over this world also. It's like the Federalists versus the state, okay, legislature, all right. So the galactic authority has been intruding their authority into what has been going on this world since the beginning. And the galactic authority are the entities, the spirits that crafted the ET-Anu Treaty, in which there are superior races and inferior races, and everybody has to be kept in line by a top-down hierarchy and a legal empire system. Was that Yahweh's baby? No. His system was different. The process of ascension was essentially sidetracked by the problem of interracial marriage because hybrids have nowhere to ascend to. All right. So the ascension process was made null and void by the ET-Anu Treaty. And so Yahweh, being a kind of a serious guy from Sirius himself, decided, because he didn't want to see peaceable and harmless human beings get annihilated at the various stargates on their way to ascension, he created the covenant paths. And this is why the Anunnaki and Yahweh was the creator of the Anunnaki. That's why he came back here. And Lil took the principles of law from Yahweh, who had already organized Lyra. Yahweh had organized Lyra. Lyra was destroyed by the Alpha Draconi. The Lyrans were brought here. They lived on Atlantis, which was a series of islands up by the North Pole until that froze and went underwater. And then the Atlanteans went to Siberia and Russia and came down through Scandinavia into Britain. Okay, that's the history we get from the New Earth archaeological digs on YouTube, okay, that the Atlanteans were originally Lyrans, and they had a philosophy and they had a lifestyle. And so that's what I started looking for in these 7 books. Which societies followed the Lyran, benign, harmless, fairness-seeking, justice-seeking peoples? Who is it? Who is it now who promote and propagate the doctrines and the dogmas of the Lyran system and of the Essenes? Because the Essenes are the Jewish format for Lyra. And Jesus, of course, his cousin, John the Baptist, was an Essene. Okay, so Jesus taught the doctrines of the Essenes, which were the doctrines of the Lyrans, in direct contrast to the empire's way of living. So what is the empire's way of living? And we see it coming about again. First, there was Sumer. And then there was Babylon. And then Assyria, and then Greece, and then Rome. And what do they all have in common? Excuse me. They all have occult symbols. They all have occult eschatology, numerology, astrology, temple prostitution, sacrifice of unwanted infants and dissidents, and war as just business. Does any of this sound familiar? Is any of this familiar? The New World Order is just the empire all over again. And this is why, back at Genesis 3:15, the primary plot of the entire Hebrew Bible is about the defeat of the empire mentality by the Lyran ethic of harmlessness, peaceableness, law-abiding, rule of law, civil consent, okay? None of which exists in the empire. In the empire, everything is just business. You want to get rid of a relative, you sell them off as a slave. No problem, all right? And so our entire human history since Sumer, since just after the flood, has been the fight to retain, to keep the Lyran ethic of justice with fairness, of the Brehon laws, of the Torah, in contradistinction to the teachings of the empire in the Talmud, the teachings of the empire in the Vatican, the teachings of the empire in the City of London. Okay, that's the struggle between natural law and the natural creator versus the galactic authorities, their ET-Anu Treaty, and their desire to promote just business. It's all just business. Okay. And so what we're looking at today is how the covenant of the law spread throughout the world, particularly after the sacking of Jerusalem in 586 BC. Now, here's a book that you've probably not seen already. This is Yardavidi, the Tribes, the Israelite Origins of Western Peoples. Mind you, now Jesus was born either in 3 BC according to the Hebrew calendar, and in 1072 in accord with the Kolbrin's British calendar. All right. And so that was a long time after the original diaspora occurred. All right. The original diaspora was 583 BC. And that's when the 10 tribes, most of the 10 tribes, headed north, left Israel entirely, and resettled in Scandinavia and Northern Europe and Britain. All right. That was at least 580 years before the birth of Jesus, possibly 1,500 years before the birth of Jesus. We have problems with our chronology. And so the dominant Celtic culture was like in Palestine, split between the lawful Torah believing Hebrew followers of natural law and God versus the Druids who embraced the Baal and Moloch and Enki style of metaphysical teachings, along with witchcraft and some other stuff like that. That's what Britain was internally fighting about. But there was a 1,000-year peace between 500 BC and 500 AD that was terminated by the overreach of the British Empire. And of course, after the British Empire came the Caliphate and then the Tartarian Empire, which, like all empires, embraced the same practices: temple prostitution, pedophilia and pederasty, war as business, okay, and sacrifice of dissidents and unwanted babies. The same thing that we're confronting today in the platform of the Democratic Party that says, kill your own children, allow hostile immigration so that there are no borders, disarm your regular citizens, and allow all kinds of sexual profligacy and sexual practices that can be used as business, just business. Prostitution is just business. Selling human body parts is just business, even if that, that business results in the deaths of innocent people. Selling babies is just business. It's adoption business, and social services selling children is just business. You see how this works? So we're dealing with the empire in its 7th or 8th iteration that still follows the same rules and social structure as Babylon did. Now, if you take Bishop Hislop's Two Babylons, which was published in the 19th century, and you read through the Two Babylons, you see that everything that the Catholic Church has been doing for the past 200 years fulfills the metaphysical expectation of the Babylonians and the metaphysical empire. So the Catholic Church prosecutes people on the basis of correct doctrine. because correct doctrine is more important to them than harmless behavior, than the Sermon on the Mount and how you treat people. Correct doctrine is the linchpin upon which the hierarchy churches assess their membership, whether it's valid or not. Okay, now the Catholic Church's hierarchy, you'll notice, is a more careful exegesis of some beliefs and some doctrines than others. There's another hierarchy that's dealing with authority, and that's the Mormon version of Christianity, which is centered in Salt Lake City, which they call Zion. You know, there are two Zions. There's the Zion in Palestine, and then there's the Zion in Salt Lake City. And that hierarchy is attempting to duplicate the Sermon on the Mount conditions of staying free from the empire system. I'm not in a position to judge how well they do with that, but I know that that is their intention, is to be free from the system, the empire system of war for money, and anything is just business. Everything is just business. You'll notice the high-tech corporations now are violating human rights left and right, particularly the right of association and the right of free speech, in the name of their business. Okay, it's all just business. Whoever they want to censor, it's just too bad. Now, I have been totally and absolutely deplatformed. And in doing this program today, it's broadcast in Dublin, but and it'll be available on Facebook to those who know where to find me. However, I am shadow banned on Facebook, although I have over 3,000 friends. I never get more than 10 replies or responses to anything that I do here, all right? And at Twitter, it's even worse. I can put up whatever I want, okay? I can put up a video or a picture or a comment, and I'll get a handful of people saying something about it, and then it's gone. It's gone forever. At YouTube, my Emily Elizabeth Windsor Craig channel was summarily just obliterated. I have my Shekiah channel there now, which is slowly, I'm adding a few things. I have an Emily Craig channel that's been there since 2008. It has just sat there empty since 2008. And it's not going anywhere because YouTube has decided that my point of view is too different, too divergent, too strange or something, that they do not distribute what I put up. So whereas if I were popular, I could have tens of thousands of subscribers, but I am not popular. And so people who come and listen to me are a very tiny minority. But, you know, as you know, the reason I do this is to enable a synthesis of all of this research and all of these holy books to finally come out and get expressed, because the churches are not synthesizing their understanding with the understanding of others. The ecumenical movement in which they give lip service to unity is just lip service, okay? The evangelical arm of the Christian church believe that this Bible, which was penned somewhere between 4,000 and 1,000 years ago, is the only book that the eternal God is able or capable of inspiring. And you and I know that that's horse feathers. That's not. Particularly when the other books, all right, the Oahspe and the Urantia book and the book of Enoch and the Sumerian cuneiform tablets all agree about the characters that are involved in this struggle between empire versus human rights and self-responsibility. All the books agree about that, and they agree about the characters. There's a God, and he has a son, and his son is here to do some work. When you look at the work of the son, I've spent some time thinking about that this week also, because the son, if you read his work from the Beatitudes, from a psychological point of view, what you realize is he's really right brain dominant. He's really right brain dominant, okay? And if you read the other books by Ningishidda, was the Book of Mormon, and it reflects the same right brain dominant attitude as Jesus Christ, although it was, the Mormons say it was given by Moroni, but it was Ningishidda, the Anunnaki, who established gold mining in South America. And he was, or is, the grandson of Nanar, who is called Nanak in the Sikh religion. And Nanar and Nanak and the Oahspe and the Siri Guru Granth Sahib all kind of work together in terms of lifestyle and ways of seeing reality. All right. And the Mormon Book of Mormon, okay, comes out of the mindset of Ningishidda and Nanak, have the same kind of mindset as Jesus Christ giving the Beatitudes. And in the Oahspe, Iesu, I-A-E-S-U, has the same kind of right brain concept of harmonizing relationships with intentions. So there's a left brain way of thinking, which is sort of the empire way of thinking, of conquering and making business and developing technology and pursuing this and pursuing that, like a typical male orientation. And then like the more Buddhist or Jain or Baha'i, there's the right brain way of the prophet who says, you know, we've really just got to learn how to get along. We really just need to learn how to get along here. Great. And so that is my hope, that when we look at the whole series of books across their entire content, you see consistency and coherence in the intention to have coherent societies based on natural law that learn how to take care of themselves and how to interact in the larger commercial environment, so that they can find sanctity, which is a form of group safety, from the truly avaricious, greedy, toxic, hyper-intellectual people who want to foment war just because it's a game. It's fun. Isn't it fun? Pyrotechnics and making things explode, like on July 4th. Are we having fun yet? I mean, that's what war gaming is about. It is a game. And the costs are horrendous on our world itself and on our people and on the animals and on the vegetation and on all life. And so there needs to be a way to put a boundary or a limit around the high-tech corporations whose desire and intention is to put humanity in such a paddock that we can't possibly get out of their control. That's what Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 is about, putting humanity into a paddock so that we cannot possibly step on the toes of the moguls and the billionaires who want to play with our lives. I hope I'm making some sense to you. Because the whole top-down situation is beginning to make some sense to me. And all these holy books work together in coherence to show a very simple situation that we humanity are faced with. We, the people on the ground, we are very tiny. And the powers that be want us to think that we are totally insignificant. Do you think we're totally insignificant? Do you think that we are worth the effort that it took to write these 7 holy books and put them into print? And do you think that the intention when these holy books were put into print, that the intention was that we would fight over which book was righter than which other book? Okay? You see what I'm saying? Right, now the Urantia book. And, you know, not everybody wants to read this. It's a litany of top-down hierarchy that pass on and that judge every thought that occurs to our minds. All right? And so you see the danger of a free-minded soul living in a universe, a telepathic universe, where every thought that occurs in the mind's eye is visible as an electrical signal, as an aura of color, or as a brain scan. What kind of power do the men have who have access to what we're thinking all the time? Okay, the Urantia book is really what shows you the level of the danger of hierarchy that believes in itself. Okay, a hierarchy with ego, a hierarchy that believes that it's righter than any of the people that it's overseeing, is what produced the ET-Anu Treaty and the 2-caste system with elites at the top and gold miners at the bottom. And if you're not gold miners, you're the wrong race, or if you're not the wrong race, you're the wrong socioeconomic class, or you're the wrong person because you can't fit in, or you're the wrong person because you don't think the right thoughts, or you're the wrong person because you don't measure up to somebody's expectations. The Urantia book tells you the potential for danger from artificial intelligence, which operates on binary digital technology. Why is that a problem? Because life itself is analog, because society and relationships are analog. There is no binary digital system that can capture language the way an analog system can, all right? And the analog system to capture language has not been built. Okay, I've been working on it. I've been working on it for a long time, all right? And it's going to take years and years to build a simple model of a classic vocabulary that can be transferred from language to language so that every language on the world has the same set of functional verbs. Well, you know, that's a challenge that we can work on. All right. We have a problem because of the disinfo and misinfo that we are flooded with every single day. All right. I get emails and links to articles all the time that come from the presumptive belief in secular materialism, in nihilism, in cynicism, and in the rhetorical questions that scientific dogmatists throw out at us all the time. Well, what if we were hit by an asteroid? Well, what if all the oceans dried up? Well, what if all, this catastrophizing mentality keeps people so intimidated that they hang on to whatever they know to be true for dear life, all right? And so I wrote this book, Come Let Us Make Man, and yes, Come Let Us Make Man is a statement by the galaxy. But the 400 photos in this book are not commonly seen, and they portray a different reality from what the high-tech corporate media want us and our children and our grandchildren to actually know about the actions and responses of the creator engineer who came here to save this world for human life and who has been overruled and overwritten every which way but Tuesday by each successive empire teaching the same despicable, filthy practices over and over again. Just business. Prostitution's just business. Okay, body parts marketing, just business. Abortions are just business, right? That's what the empire stands for. Having no national boundaries is just business, because no group has the opportunity or the option to stand for its own sovereign values. That's what the empire wants to do, is eradicate the belief in good behavior, the belief in goodness. Goodness is overwritten in maritime admiralty law by whether you follow their rules. It's all about rule baiting. And if you don't like their rules, they gaslight you and tell you why you're wrong to not like their rules. Been there? Yeah, I've been there too. All right. All right, so that's where we can find some encouragement in that the creation itself has more integrity than the sociologists who are telling us we need to bow to business. Okay, we don't need to bow to business. We can learn how to construct ourselves in a society that can get along without business, the way business is constructed now, that tramples human rights and makes money on causing harm. Iatrogenic diseases, the problems that medicine causes, create more premature deaths than diseases themselves. All right? We have a fight here that is not physical. The fight is in our own minds. When the TV is on and you're being bathed in the point of view that says that humans are only physical and what's happening now is all there is. I run into this all the time on networking sites where human relationships are gauged only in physical and behavioral terms, but the decision-making process is not invoked or discussed. How we make decisions is at the root of whether we can get free or not. Ever think about that? If we make decisions based only on what's in it for me, we're playing the empire's game, because that's what the empire profits from, is what's in it for me personally. As soon as a person thinks about the question, well, what about these others that have even less than I have? Then we're not in alignment with do what feels good and buy everything that will make you happy, making you happy, happy, happy. What makes a person happy who's aware of the values of sharing and giving and including and harmonizing is not the same as what makes a person happy who is only thinking of their own acquisitiveness and attainments. This is where our thoughts determine our choices, and our choices determine our actions, and our actions determine the outcomes, and the outcomes determine the reality that we have corporately created together. Okay, and this is where some of the problem can be fixed, is in our own minds, because our minds are generative. We see what we believe and expect to see. We hear what we believe and expect to hear. And so the act of making a new decision to search out a new option, okay, the first thing you remember is if you only do what you always done, you only get what you always got, okay. So in order to have a new outcome for your future life, the first thing that has to happen is that your mind has to change about what's real, and your mind has to change about what's possible. And when you open your mind to what's real and what's possible, you begin to see this wonderful cognitive dissonance comes in, and you begin to see that the people around you have expectations that their behavior is strengthening. Now, if you don't have the expectation, then you're open to a new option or a new experience. But as long as you have expectations, what you see is what you expect. What you hear is what you expect. So suspending your expectations about reality is step one. And what happens for me every once in a while, when I find out I'm just absolutely dead wrong about something, all right? When I find out that I really made a bad mistake, I really said something stupid, or I held an opinion that now is clearly laid out for me was based on the wrong information, all right? When we have to acknowledge we have to self-blame because we see we've really screwed up, that's when our mind opens up to the new possibility for doing something or thinking something different. And this is the process of realizing a new reality when you let go of the old stuff. It's also called being born again, okay? And I've had that happen to me a couple of times when I was in a situation that was impossible. And in my going to sleep prayers, I said, by the way, God, I don't know what I did to get myself here, but can I please start over tomorrow because this is working? And that's exactly what happened. Woke up the next day and my mind was clear, just like all the noise and all the radio stations I'd been listening to for months or years were shut off. I could start over. A prayer to be born again is a good place to start so that you can clear your mind of all the repetitive and rehearsed problems and difficulties you haven't been able to solve that way, using that way. Well, maybe we can find a way over here. Maybe we can find a way over here. So our situation is not just in our state, it's not just in our country, it's not just on our world. Our situation has been created by hierarchy, galaxy hierarchy, intervention into our world to set up treaties that enslave whole populations, okay? The Greada Treaty that Eisenhower signed with the Greys, Tall Whites, and Anunnaki was merely permission for them to abduct human beings, experiment on human beings, and that kind of stuff, okay? The Tau 9 in 2005, which Dan Borish talks about, which was negotiated under President George W. Bush, is the same thing. You can find the Tau 9 treaty online. It has nothing in it about natural law doing harm or human rights. There's no human rights in any of these commercial treaties, nor in the TPP treaty, nor in the new treaties that President Trump is negotiating with countries under his new trade policies. And this concerns me greatly, that President Trump isn't seeing to it that human rights that are laid out in the amendments to the US Constitution are not appended to all of the trade treaties that are in place, so that human beings cannot, under maritime admiralty law, be enslaved, trafficked, abused, tortured, experimented on, or their organs taken from them because they're a dissident, or because they have the wrong kind of thinking, or because their life support needs to be turned off, okay? Those treaties have to be renegotiated, first abrogated. Otherwise, humans are, in fact, as many of us know who have looked into the sovereignty movement, if your birth certificate or your social security, if you have a social security card with your name all in capital letters, you are a consumable product, okay, that showed up at the shore of your mother's water, and at the birth written down at the doctor, okay? If you don't understand the difference between sovereignty and slavery, yes, you're going to be a slave. And that legal situation has to be clarified. Now, I understand that there are humans who are too primitive and too uncivil to have any sovereign human rights because they violate the rights of other people. And what occurs to me that happened in Britain many, many, many years ago, or actually 1,000 years ago, was that the monarchy began qualifying people into positions of responsibility and qualifying them by their birth intelligence, by their behavior, and by their outcomes, and qualified them by conferring titles upon people whom they deemed to be sovereign, self-responsible individuals. Well, that process has been weakened because the bloodlines have been so weakened. They're no longer as intuitive and sturdy as they once were. A monarchy that's based on bloodline, but has access to in vitro fertilization and altering their genetic makeup just so they don't get sick, is highly likely to lose their genetic telepathic gifts and their intuition, clairaudience, clairvoyance, and sentience, all right? You have to have a leadership layer that are highly intuitive, intelligent, and character trained to serve others and not themselves. But that's not what governance is doing. What governance is doing is serving themselves. It's just us, not justice. Okay, we've got a little more time here. Just us is the corporate contract modality in which rule baiting and dotting your I's and crossing your T's is more important than who's harming whom, than who's taking care of whom, who's relating to whom. So in order to get these matters repaired, restored, we need a legal renaissance to recast the commercial and human rights into a hierarchy of rights according to merit. A hierarchy of rights according to merit. Now, I have no problem with surveillance because I don't bother anybody, all right? And they know everything I think and they know everything I buy, so, all right? There are people who have a problem with surveillance. Those are two different groups of people, and the government doesn't acknowledge the second group. There are people who are innately law-abiding. There are people who are not. The government does not share its information, nor even validate its information about a person's character. Now, because of who my father was, I have been followed very closely by the intel operation ever since I was born. I was first turned away from a hospital when I was 5 years old, and I had a very, very bad cut. And I went to the ER, and they turned me and my father away because I didn't qualify for being treated when I was 5 years old. And my foster father at the time couldn't understand why this little girl isn't going to be treated. Well, it's because I already had a record. They already knew who I was, and they've already followed me my entire 75 years, all right? And so I've had to live a very harmless life in which there's no possibility that I could step to the right or step to the left because I knew that anything I did would be known. I've always been known about by the officialdom, and I call them dumb, all right? This is a tricky world to live in when there's no room for a free will. There's no room for free will choice. It's all forced. I was just watching a video about retraining facilities in China, how they untrain Islamics, Muslims, away from their religion and into a secular materialist mindset. Okay, and basically it's training people who have been aware of spirit that the only game in town is this game in town, this Truman Show that you have to participate in, and it's never going to go any further than that. And so don't try to stretch your awareness beyond what's in front of you, your five senses, because you're never going to get beyond your five senses. That's the secular or materialist orientation. That's the orientation of the foster family that reared me as a small child, that there's nothing beyond the five senses to even grasp onto or wonder about. And yet, that's where technology ultimately comes from, is from the higher dimensions and the outside intuitive telepathic senses. But we're not supposed to get into that. We're just slaves, and we're just supposed to say what's on the piece of paper in front of us and not question why am I saying this to somebody who has a problem and I'm not letting them solve their problem. All right. Hey, Steve, are you there? Good. Hey, how about taking a little bit of a break? Yeah, I think we'll have a break, and then I'll kind of summarize, and I'll see if there are some questions, all right? And then I'll talk a little bit about where we go from here. How much music do I get? About 5 minutes. Okay, I'll see you in 5 minutes. And for my friends here at Facebook, okay, thanks for coming by. It's been good to see you. And next week, we're going to handle from Jesus Christ to now. Bye-bye.